I'm not starting it.
Like I do.
No, you're not. We've still got 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay. It's a really close up view of my face. To open? Okay.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom and welcome all of you who are joining us here in person. And we want a special welcome to Carol Carson, who's pastor at Holy Cross in Northeast. Wonderful to have you joining us here for Shabbat. You don't have to sit over there. This isn't like the Christian section, right? So come on, move over. Yeah, we don't work that way. Please join us. There we go. As we begin Shabbat, we'll invite Julie to light our Shabbat candles. The blessing can be found on page 2.
As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chadlus ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll begin with Lechuna Ranana, page 12.
Lechuna ranana, lechuna ranana, lechuna ranana, l'Adonai. Lechuna ranana, lechuna ranana, lechuna ranana, l'Adonai. Naria, naria, litzori, shehu nekad ma'afav v'toda. Naria, naria, litzori, shehu.
Kabbalat Shabbat, this Friday evening service, is one that we leave the pressures and the complications and the stresses of our daily lives and our weeks behind. So I invite you all to close your eyes, take a deep breath, let the troubles, the complications, the stresses, the things that irk you fade. As we bring Shabbat into our hearts, we think of these bright lights that we just lit. These lights that lead us to a warmer, a brighter, a better place. And as our ancient ancestors did in the hilltops of Tzfat, when they went out to greet the Shabbat bride, we too greet Shabbat and we welcome Shabbat into our hearts in as precious a moment as if Shabbat was indeed the bride that we are greeting for the first time. So we join in Lecha Dodi, page 20.
Lecha Dodi likrat kalai yalalai 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 b'nei Shabbat. Mekabelai
Please be seated as we continue, page 22. Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat, a psalm for Shabbat.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
Page 24. Shalom Aleichem.
Alechem shalom.
Alechem shalom, a greeting, a blessing for peace for all of us. Page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seirchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 26. There we find Chatzi Kaddish. And somebody asked me last week, whenever, why do we stand for Chatzi Kaddish? What's so important about Chatzi Kaddish? The answer is nothing. What's important actually is what follows. And Chatzi Kaddish is seen as, well, Kaddish in general in different iterations. We have different versions of it as we go through our service, at least in a traditional service, there would be different versions of it. We have this one and the one at the end of our service in our service, but in a traditional service, you would have different versions of it actually at the end of each of the major rubrics of the service. And so as we end this part of the service, which is known as Kabbalat Shabbat, or the welcoming of Shabbat, and we begin our Shema and its blessings section, which begins with a call to worship. And the tradition has been not to make an interruption between the Chatzi Kaddish and the first part of the Shema and its blessings, which is the Baruch Hu. And so we actually rise for Chatzi Kaddish so that we don't have to interrupt the flow between the two prayers. So please rise.
Yitkadav, yitkadash me rabba, ve'almadi barach hirute, ve'amlich malchute, v'chayechon u'vyomechon, u'chayetecho beit Yisrael, bagala, u'vizman kariv, Yimaru, Amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevorach, le'olam al me'amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'shabach, V'yitbar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitameh, V'yitamah, Shmei Dekudeshav, Baruchu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, Yimeru, Amen. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach,
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach, Leolam Vaed. Please be seated, and we'll continue page 30 with Ma'ariv Aravim, a prayer thanking God for the miracles, the beauty of creation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem b'rakia kirtzono. Bore yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzivaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works in the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Ahavat olam, made Yisrael, Amechavta, Amechavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta, Al kein Adonai Eloheinu ושוכבנו, ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך. ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו, לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, נגי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
We turn together to page 34 as we rise for Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please be seated, and we'll continue with Ve'ahavta on page 36, the prayer that follows Shema, the prayer that says, here's how we think about God. We think about God when we lie down, when we get up, when we walk around throughout our day.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 39. Let's join together in the middle of the page. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, oseh feleh.
מלכותך ראו בניך בוקר ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Let's turn together to page 43 and join at the top of the page. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will.
Baruch atah Adonai haborei suchat shalom. Shalom aleinu el kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haborei suchat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
Page 45. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. V'nilvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam, oti leolam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinabash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam.
Page 47. Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. We rise for Amidah, page 46.
Adonai, sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula Lifnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magid, Baruch atah Adonai, Magid Abraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol atah Rav Hoshia, Morid Hatam, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Nichamocha Bal Geburot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman Hatal HaChayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Atah Kadosh v'Shimcha Kadosh, Kadoshim b'chol yom yahalu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. We continue page 53. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Let's join together in the middle of the page, page 57. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'eh lehodot. And let's join together in our prayer for peace on page 61. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amecha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם.
We take a few moments and leave the prayer book aside and look inward to those prayers, those thoughts, those messages, those conversations we each have in our hearts that we want to perhaps share with the Creator of all.
Refi, libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri vegoali vegoali.
We turn together to page 253. There we find our prayer for healing. There is so much pain in the world. You can't watch a news program without seeing tragedy. Tragedy of mind and body and heart and soul. And so we send our energies of healing to the world. We send our energies of healing to those who need it. In our congregation, we especially mention Jacob Adams and Pat Hanna, Doug Ford, Steve Toddleben, Merv Weinman, Diane Levy, Joan Rosenthal, Corinne McCarthy, Ralph Holt, Cindy Rhodes, Frank Fusaro, Renee Goldman, Phil DeFrancesco, Jay Kaler, Debbie Perry, Amy Doherty, Dick Metcalf, Sarah Johns, Wanda Ehart, Julie Matthews, Dane Marcinowski, Maggie Lee, Noyak Grinberg, Bridget Mueller, Andy Green, Robin Lewis, Rabbi John Bush, and Robert Wozniak. If you're joining us here via live stream and you have a name that you would like to share, please enter the name into our chat box. If you're here in person and would like to share a name of somebody that you want to send a special energy of healing to, please, as I look around, share that name. We join together in our blessing for healing.
Yisheberach Avotenu Mekor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Yisheberach Imotenu Mekor habracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. This week we read Parshat Chukat. It's an interesting parsha. It is filled with peculiar topics. It begins with this quaint story of the Red Heifer. Anybody feeling impure tonight? So the Red Heifer was this mythical creature that had to be completely red hair. And if you've ever looked at a herd of cows, one thing that every herd of cows has in common is that no two look alike. So the fact that you would have to find a cow that was completely covered in red hair is all but impossible. And this was a requirement in order for the priests to purify themselves. Now, we Jews are always fond of science, right? We have leaders of science in our history. We have led the world in many scientific discoveries. And so probably 15 or more years ago, there was a science grant given in Israel for the possibility of breeding a red heifer. Guess what? You can't do it. Or they couldn't do it. Which actually proves the idea that perhaps we're not really supposed to. Perhaps it's elusive for a reason. In the ancient world, this would have been something that the priests would have used in order to purify themselves had they come into contact with a dead body, for instance, that they would purify themselves. If you've ever heard of the idea that somebody who is descended from the priests, who is a Kohen, can't attend a funeral or can't go into a cemetery, right? Now, the reason of that is that should the Messiah appear, that person would be called on to priestly duties. And if that person had been in contact with a dead body, they would be impure, and we don't have a red heifer to purify them with. Okay. So while that's all interesting, that's not really what I want to talk about. What I really want to talk about is the episode of Moses and Aaron, who are told by God, when the people complain about water and not having enough to drink, well, let me go back. It is said in our midrashic tradition that Miriam is the one who is responsible for making sure that there is water for the people during their wanderings. It is on her zechut, on her merit, that we were given water. In fact, there are midrashic traditions that say Miriam's well, which was the well that was mythically following the Israelites as they went through the desert, this well was actually one of the 10 things that God thought about creating just before God created the world. One of the 10 critical pieces of creation. When Miriam dies, the well goes away. And people are without water. And of course, when Jews are missing something in their lives, what do? We kvetch. And so the people kvetch to Moses and they say, and this is really where we get our the beginning of every Jewish joke or something that says, why did you take us from Egypt? We could have died there. Why did we have to come to this desert to die? And so Moses and Aaron go to God and they present this crisis. Of course, the question is, God, of course, knew what was going on, but nevertheless, Moses and Aaron approach God with this, and God says, okay, not a problem. Let's talk to the rock. Go and in front of the people and speak to the rock. We've seen this before. This happened early in the Exodus experience, and God says to Moses, hit the rock. And so Moses, in that episode, comes to the people and says, God is providing us with water. Here's your water. Knocking on the rock, and the water comes out. In this episode, God says to Moses and Aaron, speak to the rock. Why change? That's a question. by the change? We don't know. We don't know. But instead of speaking to the rock, what does Moses do? He hits the rock. And then it is said that because he hit the rock, God actually says, that's the reason why you guys are not coming into the land of Israel. Punishment. Okay, you've been a leader for 40 years. Okay, you took the people out of Israel. Okay, you gave up everything in your life, but you didn't do this thing, so you're going to... No. I actually think it's not because Moses hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. I actually think it's because of what Moses actually says right before, which is, okay, you want water, we're going to give you water. And then Moses hits the rock and the water flows. What's the problem with that statement? Right. The water isn't Moses's creation. Moses didn't cause the water to come out of the rock. That's simply God. And God immediately recognizes that Moses is not seeing the partnership in the way in which God wants us to partner. And knows that if left to our own devices, Moses is quickly going to assume a level of almost being deified in some way. And so immediately God realizes that in order for this grand enterprise called the Jewish people to survive, we have to create succession and leadership. That leaders are not permanent, leaders are not divinely chosen, or maybe they're divinely chosen, but they're certainly not divine themselves. And so God orchestrates this system in which leaders succeed each other. They fill a role for a time. And then, like everybody else, their time is over. But the critical piece is the partnership. Because God could have simply let water flow from the rock. Why did God need the big announcement from Moses? The mystics will tell you because we are in a partnership. We are in this dynamic partnership between the people and God, and it takes both. So, for instance, during the sanctification of God's name in the morning service, we have the line that says, Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy is God of hosts, right? And the tradition is for us to raise up on our toes during those three words of Kadosh, 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 holy, 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 right? Why are we getting up on our toes? It's a message. We are sending a message to the heavenly realm. And it isn't until we say our praises of God that the heavenly court can begin their praises. And this is an extension of that. The idea that God doesn't operate by the divine self. God needs us to partner with God to make the world whole. So God needs Moses and Aaron to bring that message forward and to say, God's providing us water. We're doing our part. We're going to talk to the rock. Here comes the water. Of course, they hit the rock, but God still lets the water flow. But they miss that partnership part. They take full credit for it. And when we take full credit for things that aren't our own, especially when it has to do with things that God creates, it gives us too much power. In the same way that a farmer, a Jewish farmer, doesn't own the whole crop. The edges and the corners, not theirs. That belongs to the community. In a recognition that says, You may have worked on that land, but it is God who created that whole sophisticated process of growing and harvesting to happen. You partnered. And so this is a way that you give back to the partnership. So in this week, we have lots of opportunities to give back. And I think in our world, we have lots of ways that we give back. We partner with God in the way we give to each other, the way we treat each other, the way we value each other, and the way we come together and share in moments like this. So I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom. And we'll continue with Aleinu on page 282. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, התהית גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ ומושבי קרוב בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו וגובר מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפזו אותו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום בהשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל והארץ מתחת אין עוד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love we are comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you as we remember all those who have gone before us. We are in the period of Shiva for Bruce Edward Rigler. We send condolences to his fiancée, Anastasia Cullen. And we observe Yahrzeit this week for Lena Kimmel, Leon Mandel, John Coates, Pearl Dreyfus, Ida Schlesinger, James Ogilvy, Marilyn Weinman, Sidney Rain, Norma Green Sherman, Amelia Schuster Falk, Babette Dreyfus, Richard Henry Zaks, Joseph William Weil, Gilbert Schulman Jr., Saul Kaler, Kurt Horowitz, Irma Schuster, Minnie Kramer, Henry Schulhoff, Anna Krawitz, Helene Roberts, and Walton Strauss. If you're joining us via live stream and you have a name that you would like to add, please put that name into our chat box. If you are here in person and you would like to add a name, please, as I look around, do so. We turn together to the words of Kaddish on page 294. Please rise. Yitkadal veyitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ba'alma divrach rutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chai echon uv'yom echon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach la'alam u'lalmeh almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitma'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. We have just a few announcements this evening. Services this week are in memory of Leon Mendel, Sidney Rain, Saul Kaler, Helene Roberts, and Walton Strauss. Tomorrow morning, we have Torah study at 9:30. Truth be told, it's not actually Torah study. We are studying Bible. We are actually going through, we are working our way through the writings, the prophets rather, and we are in Judges. So if you would like to join us via Zoom, the link is here, and we'd love to have you. Next week we will not be live streamed because we will have one of our beach Shabbat celebrations. We're at beach 11 this time, which is the one that's further down from sort of halfway, well, most of the way into the park at Presque Isle. And we're asking people to bring a side dish if they to share, and we will provide the sacred temple hot dogs and drinks. So love to have you. It's a beautiful Shabbat, and my friends and colleagues, Sue Peteshin and Mark Kamens will be here actually in person with us, and will lead us in music that evening. So it should be really, really fun. So any other announcements that I forgot? Okay, great. Jesse, thank you as always. And wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom. And we're going to continue as we invite Carly forward to. That's not what you meant? No. Let's join together in Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon imchilanu zikaron lemaaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat koshecha v'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh
L'chaim.
Join together.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And we're going to conclude with
Oseh shalom.
Oseh shalom.
Oseh
Shalom bimroma. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru imeru amen. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Would somebody like to take the challah home? Perfect. Yeah.